The most important time spent is getting into the classroom and doing your direct assessment. We review the most recent IEP and any applicable, the most recent evaluations that were conducted, okay? And the most important thing is we do not monitor IEP goals. That is not our job. It is not our job to see whether or not the district is implementing IEP goals.
What if an IEP goal is behavioral?
If an IEP goal is behavioral, and it's usually in what's called in the social emotional section, we might want to take a look at that. Yes, we don't need to read and report on every single assessment that was done on this child. Most recent, and then we refer to it. You know, I reviewed the following records: most recent IEP, most recent psychological education, most recent evaluations. You can even be a little bit general on that. Okay, you don't have to get crazy in terms of all the records you review. Now, every case is different. Now, a lot of kids, the BD population, they have extensive disciplinary files. That's a record you want to review and probably document in the IEP. And I do that all the time. Here is this student has an extensive, administrative discipline file, and I will list, I'll give examples of all the infractions, and I've done that before. But that's for a BD kid and an ED student who, I think that's important information. You are going to get experience and you'll get better at knowing what to include. Okay, but we don't need to read, don't waste a lot of time on a records review. Okay, if there was an FBA, even if an FBA was done 5 years ago in a different setting, do we review that? Yeah, we take a look at it and maybe look at how things have changed. If anything really seems to carry over into the current setting or what's currently being described as a problem, but don't spend a lot of time doing this. Okay, here's my tips and considerations for this indirect assessment. Always conduct a parent-guardian interview, and we've already went through the reasons why to do so. Interview all applicable teachers and staff. When I say applicable, just the ones where it's reported that the problem behaviors are occurring, just kind of like the main people, working with the student. Case manager maybe, but that case manager isn't in the classroom. I don't think that's relevant. Principal, unless the kid's been in the principal's office in discipline, you got to use a little bit of judgment here. And then you want to document in the FBA. Now, do you want to document everything that person said? You might interview 5 or 6 people. Do you want to document everything? No. You just who you interviewed, maybe give a summary of what some of the concerns were and how they relate to what the current reason you are in there doing an FBA is for. Do a targeted records review. We did one in a district. I had somebody do it with me to shadow me. It was an extensive file. It was a student who was pretty low functioning, and she was in kind of a life skills kind of transition phase, but the records were like this. Just kind of went through, combed through, and looked for things that might be applicable and might be impacting the behavior. We actually saw a very obscure reference to that the student has a vision issue and was prescribed glasses. I circled that thing. This is a student who's having compliance issues, who's having problems, with instruction and completing tasks and things like that. So that's something I'm honing right in on, and I'm going to do some further digging and investigate. That's something we can assess. Students' completion of tasks with glasses versus without glasses. Students' on-task behavior with glasses, without glasses. Do targeted records review, but you don't have to go crazy doing this. The most important time spent is getting into the classroom and doing your direct assessment. What happens in a lot of districts is the communication is inconsistent, and that's where you guys really got to look at making sure when you have plans in place and you're working and consulting in districts, make sure there's a central line of communication. Okay, the teacher, between the teacher, the case manager, the consultant, there has to be one unified central line of communication. So it's not the teacher emailing the parents, it's you emailing the parents, it's the case manager emailing the parents, because all that's going to do is create discrepancies in terms of how the student's performance and progress is being reported. And that happens all the time.
What Tony's saying is really important, that you streamline that communication as much as possible, because anybody can poke, even with our own organization, anybody can poke holes and find inconsistencies if you ask enough people. And then if you ask 5 different people something, there's going to be slight variances in the subjectivity of their report. You can draw, I always say it's someone drawing a target around an arrow. You're finding a problem because you're creating one by asking so many questions. So it's important that what Tony said about recommending that the school has a point of contact to streamline. It doesn't mean you're hiding anything. You're streamlining the communication. Same thing we have that organizationally at times when a client is calling like 500 people in the office, they could end up just accidentally getting a slightly different variation of the message, which makes it look like your whole message is wrong. So that makes sense. It's good to streamline that communication, and not in an effort to hide anything, but in an effort to make sure there's not someone purposely trying to split the communication and the team.